Yeah, CB on the mic. World Rule Talk. Yeah. CB break it down, yeah, the host with the vision. From the classics to the new, every film get precision. Obscure reels hitting gems, yeah, we dig in the vault. Every frame get examined, every angle we talk. From the old school grain to the high def shine. Indie flicks to the hits, yeah, we cover all time. If it's cinema gold, then you know we gon' say hit subscribe, tap in, let the critics all play. Yeah, film talk strong, never fading away. World Rule Talk forever and a day longer.
Yo, what up though? This is your boy C. Dot to the B. Dot coming at y'all once again with another movie review. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are in our fourth and final week of spring in action. And I decided to save this movie for last because this is a movie that I remember really well. You know, I had this movie on VHS and I swear to God, I used to watch it almost every day. A lot of people hated this film, you know, because of the acting, the characters, and the story itself. You know what I'm saying? But me, it was a guilty pleasure of mine. I can't even front. I gotta be honest with you. Now, I'm always getting on my boy Saute J for liking bad movies, but I can't even front. I like this movie. You know what I'm saying? But that movie is Double Dragon. So it stars Mark Dacascos and Scott Wolf as Billy and Jimmy Lee. And so, yo, I'm gonna say this right here too. Now, even as a kid, I used to always scratch my head every time I watched this film because I'm like, okay, so the video games are technically more realistic than the movie. So in the games, Marion, she gets kidnapped. And you, as Billy or Jimmy or both, have to go rescue her. And that's pretty much the whole plot of the game. You know what I'm saying? But in the movie, Marion's played by Alyssa Milano. And I'm going to say this, I got to be honest, I was never really, you know, attracted to her like that. I didn't think, you know what I'm saying, she was all that, in my opinion. She's okay, but she's not a 10. You know what I'm saying? But in the movie, Alyssa Milano's character was actually a part of this gang called the Power Corps. You know what I'm saying? So she was kind of a major character in this film. But the whole premise basically in this movie was about these two medallions that were separated by this king from way back when. You know what I'm saying? And the medallion was given to his sons before he sacrificed himself. And so now in modern day, Billy and Jimmy's dad was excavating an area and he found the medallion. And he was partners with Koga Shuko, aka Victor Geisman. You know what I'm saying? And so what happened was Shuko was trying to convince their father that, you know, you could do many great things with the medallion, but he didn't want to do that. You know what I'm saying? He wanted to, you know, keep them safe, basically in the right hands. And so Shuko winds up killing their dad. And Jimmy finds this out later on. But in the beginning of the film, I'm not going to talk about this film verbatim, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm sure a lot of y'all has probably already seen it. But in the beginning of the film, though, they're in this little village in China, somewhere in China, you know what I'm saying? We don't know where, but it's somewhere. And so Koga Shuko's henchman, you know what I'm saying, basically invades this village trying to get the monks to tell them where the other half of the medallion is. But there's only one issue with that. The monks cut out their tongue so they can't talk. But seems, you know, to me that they did that for no reason, because when the lead henchman, which turns out to be Lash, you know what I'm saying, she's one of the monks, he starts running away and he leads her right to the other half of the medallion. And so now they got what they came for. And they go back to, you know, Shuko's office and they hand it to him. And so this is kind of a scene to me. It reminds me of the scene that was in Guyver, where whatchamacallit, I forgot what the lead villain's name was. You know what I'm saying? In that movie. But he was looking for the Guyver unit, and they thought they found it. And so they took it back to him, to his office, and he opened up the briefcase, and it turned out to be just a damn toaster. Now, in this movie, Shuko did the same thing, except it was a little box, and it turned out to be only half of the medallion. So he makes them go out and look for the other half. And so now we cut to Billy and Jimmy at this tournament. You know, they struggling and everything like that, so they need the money. You know what I'm saying? So they're in this tournament to try to win the prize money, but Billy gets them disqualified. Now, I'm going to say Scott Wolf's character in the movie, I feel like he was kind of miscast a little bit because he had no martial arts experience. You know what I'm saying? But Mark Dacascos, on the other hand, was a legitimate martial artist. You know what I'm saying? So, like I said, Billy gets them disqualified because he jumps on one of the he jumps on the head of one of the challengers or whatever, or competitors, and he starts giving them a noogie. He jumps on their back. And so that's what gets them disqualified. And now Jimmy's pissed off about this. So after the two guys, you know, get the trophy, they walk over to Billy and Jimmy and starts taunting them. And so now they getting beat up. This is like a fight for real. And so after this happens, they, you know, are making their way home, trying to get home before the gangs start harassing them. And they do get pulled over by this one guy, you know what I'm saying? And so, like, he was like dressed as a female. Billy told Jimmy to pull over, and Jimmy did that. You know what I'm saying? So, but I'm like this too. Let me say this. So, Jimmy, right? Not Jimmy, but you see these two, you see this woman or whatever standing outside of a car, you know what I'm saying, bending over at night, knowing that there are gangs out there, you know, acting like they need help. You ought to question that. But, you know, Billy being Billy in this movie, you know what I'm saying, he made Jimmy pull over, but it turns out that it was a guy. And so now the Mohawks pull them over, right? They start harassing them about money, and you need, you know, it's like $50 or something like that to be on their way. But Jimmy didn't pay them, so now it's like a chase down the street. You know what I mean? So there's this one scene, I'm going to say this right now. There's this one scene where Billy takes this newspaper, throws it out the window, and it hits the window of Bobo's truck. And so they had this little, instead of just pulling the paper off and throwing it to the side, they decided to leave it on there because they had this little stupid ass mechanism where it was kind of like a joystick, and it's like this little video game looking screen. You know what I'm saying? The screen with this video game looking graphics on it. You know what I'm saying? And it started like chasing them that way. I thought that was the dumbest shit. I can't even front. This was my movie, but that was dumb. So Billy and Jimmy, they are cornered in this alley because Bobo crashed his truck. And so now it was about to be a fight that broke out between Billy, Jimmy, and a Bobo, but until the power cord showed up. And this is where we meet Marion. You know what I mean? So she's the leader of the power cord. And so this is what gets rid of Bobo and the little skinny dude with the mohawk. You know what I mean? And now we're back at the theater. You know what I mean? No. The next scene is, you know, Bobo is talking to Shuko about the other half of the medallion, because he didn't know that's what it looked like. He thought it was just a piece of junk. And so Shuko decided to give him a fitting punishment, and he turned him into like this mutant, which is kind of accurate to a Bobo, kind of, not really, but kind of in the games. You know what I'm saying? And so now Billy and Jimmy and Satori are back in this abandoned theater where they live, and Satori is explaining to them about how the medallion came about and, what it can do. You know what I'm saying? What it's capable of. So we know that Billy has the medallion, the power over the body, and Shuko has the power over the soul with his medallion. So pretty much the whole movie, Billy and Jimmy is going through, all these hijinks just to avoid Shuko from giving him the medallion. So it really starts where the next day Shuko shows up at the theater and he finds Satori, and he knows Satori has the other half of that medallion. And so now a fight breaks out. Billy and Jimmy, they start running away from Huey and Lewis. Yes, that's the name of the two henchmen, of Shuko's in this movie. His right hand and his left hand. Huey and Lewis. And so one of the guys in this movie, though, one of the henchmen, he's like a big deal, though, because back in the day, he used to play a henchman in a lot of movies. I mean, a lot of movies. He was in a lot of stuff. He was a legitimate martial artist, though. You know what I'm saying? But as I was saying, I felt like Scott Wolf, this is the reason why I felt like he was miscast, because a lot of the things that he did in this movie was like Home Alone style, traps. No, not traps, but like he did a lot of Home Alone style hijinks to the henchmen in this movie. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't really using any martial arts until like near the end, and even then, you could tell his martial arts were very minimal. You know what I'm saying? But Mark Dacascos, on the other hand, he was legit. He's legit. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was a great martial artist, and I used to love watching his movies, man, just for the fights. But after they wind up taking out the two henchmen, this is where Abobo shows up, right? And so now they start running from him. And then Shuko, he winds up possessing Satori, because like I said, he had power over the soul. So he takes over her body, and now, Shuko tries to trick Jimmy and Billy into giving him the medallion as Satori. But they find out something is wrong, and they trap her in this cage. Now, I know I said I wasn't going to talk about this movie verbatim, but I just have to mention this part. So, after Shuko fails in getting the second half of the medallion, he gives them an ultimatum. Either you give me the medallion or I'm going to burn this theater down with Satori in the cage. But Satori, she winds up breaking out the cage. Mind you. So, after she does this, right, she sends the two outside the door, the main entrance, and she stays behind just to get knocked out by Shuko, which made no sense to me at all, man. They could have all escaped, but they didn't. So he knocks her out, and this was a bad way to go out, man. So what happened was she wakes up, she comes to, and she sees she's surrounded by fire. And the next thing you know, before she can do anything, the whole theater just blows up. And so now they're on their own at this point. You know what I'm saying? Their car breaks down, the engine is gone, and so now they're trying to get help from Marion. And yes, they do go to the power core, and they still can't figure out how to work the medallion. And when they thought they got somewhere with it, it turns out that it was one of the kids in the power core swinging like this rope or whatever, like one of those ropes that makes a sound when you swing it. I would have been pissed off, y'all. I'd be like, man, that's some bullshit. But anyway, so they're explaining to Satori, that Shuko is trying to come after them and kill them for the second half of the medallion. So this is, did I say Satori? Marion. I'm tripping, yo. So this is when Marion decides to, help the two. You know what I'm saying? And so they break in, they create a distraction in like this little mall. You know what I mean? I guess where all Shuko's associates are or whatever. I don't know, but you had a lot of Power Corps members. They started skating through the mall, causing the ruckus. You know what I mean? And then the three, Jimmy, Billy, and Marion, they break in Shuko's building, and so they're in the ventilation system, and they're trying to get the other half of the medallion because I don't know why I keep saying Satori, but Marion had like this little magnet on her shirt, and so they used the magnet and an extremely long piece of string, right, to try to get the second half of the medallion, well, Shuko's half of the medallion, but they failed because Lash spotted them trying to do so, and so she takes his weapon or whatever, and she starts stabbing the ceiling. You know what I'm saying? Really trying to kill these three, and so they fall out of the ceiling and they hit the floor. And so this is where Chief Delirio, you know, that's Marion's father, and so he, you know, catches her trying to do his job. And so all three of them run away while Delirio is trying to hold off Lash. You know what I'm saying? So Shuko is going after those three. You know what I'm saying? And so he takes over these bodies in like this little morgue or whatever. There was like suspended animation or something like that. And so he takes over two of the bodies to fight these three. You know what I'm saying? So he successfully captures Jimmy, and the other two get away. I know I'm talking about this movie verbatim. I know. And so now we get to the part where Shuko is talking to Jimmy about getting the medallion, and he reveals to Jimmy that he was the one that killed his father, and that's what happened to him. You know what I'm saying? And so at this point, we cut to the scene where Billy and Marion are talking, and they was about to, you know, start kissing and whatnot. It's one of those cliches where, you know, they open up to each other, and next thing you know, right before they kiss each other, something happens. Which, you know, you had Shuko's henchmen break into the power core, and now all the power core kids and adults are fighting Shuko's henchmen. And so after a while, well, there's two scenes in this movie that was kind of intelligent. So the first scene is when, you know, Lash gets the best of Marion, and she says, "Now who's the boss?" Which, you know, Alyssa Milano was in that show. But then, you know, a scene or two after that, you know, Marion gets the best of Lash, and she says, "You're lucky, because generally I put people in the hospital." And I guess old girl, you know, the chick that plays Lash was in General Hospital. You know what I'm saying? I thought that scene was quite clever. But anyway, after a while, this is where Jimmy shows up. And so, you know, Billy's happy to see him, but it turns out that Koga Shuko had taken over Jimmy's body. And so Shuko was willing to do anything to get that medallion, including sacrifice Jimmy. You know what I'm saying? Now, it was just like punching bag hanging from the top of the ceiling, and it was his rope. He pulled it off, you know what I'm saying, and tried to basically kill Jimmy with it. You know what I mean? But Billy moved Jimmy out the way and took the hit, because earlier Billy, you know, he threw the medallion because he figured it was nothing but trouble. But it turns out he finally activated it somehow. How? I don't know, because he had just threw it. You know what I mean? So the medallion returns to his hands, and you can see like this beam of light going through his body or whatever. And so now he's pretty much invincible. You know what I'm saying? And so Billy had enough of Jimmy's shit. You know what I mean? Well, Shuko shit. But he had enough and starts beating the hell out of Jimmy, and he literally beat Shuko out of him. And so now Billy's half of the medallion is on the floor, because while Shuko was still in Jimmy's body, he yanked it off his neck. And so before the two were able to get to it, Shuko grabbed it. And now he put the two halves together. And this is where this whole movie just falls apart for me. I mean, I still like it. It's still a guilty pleasure, but it falls apart for me because the thing is, right when Shugo gets the two halves of the medallion, you would think he was this all-powerful entity or whatever, right? Because just one half made him into like this shadow demon that could go inside people's bodies. But when he got both halves, he became like this dark demon looking character who split themselves into two demons. And so now he's fighting Billy and Jimmy, you know what I'm saying, with the two forms, the two halves. And so a Bobo shows up and he tells Marion to, kick on the lights, hit the lights, you know what I'm saying, turn on the lights. And so once Marion successfully does this, we come to find out that was Shuko's weakness with that shadow power. And so Jimmy and Billy winds up getting the upper hand on Shuko. And this is when they knock him back to normal, and the two halves of the medallion falls into their hands. You know what I'm saying? Both halves. And so this time, when they put the two halves together, they get these red and blue suits. And I feel like, to be honest with you, other than this and a few characters in this movie, this was the only thing that had anything to do with Double Dragon. Just the colors that they wore. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't even the outfits. It was just the colors. And so now they beat the hell out of Shuko, and Jimmy jumps into his body just to, you know what I'm saying? Just to get him arrested. And just to help out the police department. Because while he was in Shuko's body, he made out a check for $129 million, right? And I ain't gonna lie, this scene was funny when Chief Delario thought that Shuko was trying to bribe him. And he said, "No bribe, arrest me." Yo, that had me dying. The first time I seen that, even as a kid, that had me dying, man. That was funny. But, to stop hitting yourself and all that, when he was making Shuko slap himself while he was in his body, that was kind of corny. You know what I mean? And so after Shuko gets arrested, Billy and Jimmy, they decided to stay behind in the city to help clean up. And they get their dragon wagon back. You know what I'm saying? The car that was destroyed earlier. And it was souped up, fixed up and everything. And so Bobo comes around and he wants to start hanging out with them. But Jimmy apparently thinks that Billy was inside of him. Mind you, Jimmy had the power over this soul, which he can jump into different people's bodies. Billy had power over the body, which means he was invincible. And so when they find out that wasn't Billy inside of a Bobo, which I don't know why he thought that was the case. They panic and the Bobo flies down the street. And that's pretty much the end of the movie. But before the credits go off, we see the two henchmen, Huey and Lewis, on the side of the road holding signs. You know what I'm saying? And that's supposed to be like a comedic thing. You know what I mean? But this movie for me was pretty good, man. I mean, I know a lot of people didn't like it. Some people probably gave it a 0 out of 10. But for me, I'm going to definitely be generous, man. I'm going to give this movie, like I said, it's a guilty pleasure. So for me, it gets a 5. You know what I mean? It tried. It did its thing. Some of the lines in this movie had me cringing a little bit. Just a little bit. Like when Billy told Jimmy, "I'm sorry I had to kick your butt so bad." And Jimmy is like, "No, you kicked Koga Puko's butt." That line had me cringing. And then, the little hand gesture they did, the little, the high five they did, I didn't like that either. I can't even front. Now, there was one scene in this movie that I swear to God, man, this character has got to be the stupidest fucking character in history, yo. So, one of the gang members was dressed up as a mailman. Or, I don't know if he was a legitimate mailman because he had a mail bag with mail in it when he, jumped off the roof. So, he announced himself while Billy and Jimmy were on the ground, mind you. He yelled out, "Special delivery, airmail," and jumped off the roof, and all they did was step out the way, and he fell face first into the ground. I was just like, yo, come on, son. Come on. these characters in this movie, like the gangs or whatever, they were idiots. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, yo, what the hell kind of these weren't even Mad Max looking gangs, man, because some of them were dressed up as mimes, some of them dressed up as mailmen, some of them were dressed up as, you know what I'm saying, had the mohawks and shit, you know what I mean? And I was just like, yo, But like I said, man, I could watch this movie over and over and over again. It's still and always going to be a guilty pleasure to me. You know what I mean? So if you haven't seen Double Dragon, make sure you give it a watch, man. Now, if you got some friends over, definitely give it a watch, because I'm sure y'all are going to find something to, you know what I'm saying, find something about it to clown. You know what I mean? Like, this is a good time. It's a good time if you're drinking too, I'm sure. You know what I mean? But if you got friends over, definitely check this movie out. You'll have a good time with it. But yeah, that's my review for Double Dragon. And I thank y'all for listening to me yap once again. And we will be back here next Wednesday. So we're going to be talking about children's movies like Toy Story, you know, movies like that. So we're moving on into those. So stay tuned for that. And I will talk to y'all later. Alright? Peace.